Have you ever had one of those weeks where it feels like life is out to get you? You spill your coffee first thing in the morning, your computer crashes right before a deadline, you say something awkward in a conversation, and replay it all night long. People ignore your messages, opportunities slip through your fingers, objects seem to break more easily, and even your own body feels like it's working against you. And you tell yourself, of course this would happen to me. Nothing ever goes right. You don't say it out loud, but deep down there's this thought, maybe I'm cursed, maybe the universe just hates me, maybe I'm broken. Now pause. What if I told you something radical, something that might actually change everything? What if it's not the universe that changed, but your mind? Aaron Beck, the psychiatrist who redefined how we understand depression, spent decades sitting across from people who felt exactly like you do. And he noticed something strange. When someone is depressed, it's not just their mood that changes. Their entire perception of reality warps. What they see, what they feel, what they remember, how they respond, it all shifts. He called it the Negative Cognitive Triad, a trio of distorted beliefs that become the lens through which depression forces you to see the world. You begin to view yourself as worthless. You see the world as hostile and empty, and you look at the future as hopeless and doomed. This isn't poetic, it's clinical, it's real, and it's devastating. You see, when you're depressed, your brain becomes a master at filtering out everything neutral or good. 10 things might happen in a day, 7 of them okay or even positive, but your brain locks onto the 3 bad ones like a predator stalking prey, and it ignores the rest. You genuinely feel like the whole day was a disaster, not because you're lying to yourself, but because depression has hijacked your perception. And it doesn't stop there. These distorted thoughts begin to control how you behave. You stop trying, you withdraw, you procrastinate, you isolate yourself. And then what happens? Things do start falling apart. But not because of fate, not because you're cursed, because you're acting from a mental framework that guarantees failure, disappointment, and regret. This is the trap. This is the cycle. Thought, emotion, behavior, consequence, thought. A self-reinforcing loop that keeps dragging you deeper. And maybe no one ever explained it to you like this before. Maybe you've been blaming yourself for being negative or lazy or too emotional. But this isn't a character flaw. This is how depression operates. So here's the truth you were never told. You're not weak. You're not broken. You're not unlucky. You are caught in a system that makes it feel like everything is going wrong, when in fact your mind has just been rewired to detect danger, failure, and disappointment everywhere it looks. It's like walking through life with cracked glasses. Everything seems damaged, but it's the lens that's broken. And that means something powerful. You can fix the lens. In this video, we're going to explore exactly how depression creates the illusion that everything is collapsing, why your brain starts predicting failure before anything even happens, and most importantly, how to break the cycle. Not with toxic positivity, not with empty motivation, but with precision, with strategy, with tools that Aaron Beck developed to help people like you see clearly again. You're not imagining it. Things really do feel like they're falling apart. But it's not fate. It's not some cruel universe. It's a system you can understand and change. And it starts right now. Let me ask you a brutal question. What do you believe about yourself when no one is watching? Not what you say to others. Not the version of you that wears a mask in public, but that voice in your head, the one that speaks when the lights are off, when you've failed again, when you're too tired to pretend. If you're depressed, chances are that voice isn't just cruel. It's merciless, and it's lying to you every single day. Aaron Beck discovered that depression doesn't just make you feel bad. It rewrites your core beliefs about three fundamental things: yourself, the world, and the future. He called it the Negative Cognitive Triad, a distorted lens through which everything is filtered. And once it takes hold, reality bends around it. First, it attacks your sense of self. You begin to believe you are worthless, broken, incapable, unlovable. It's not that you did something wrong, it's that you are something wrong. Your mind whispers, you ruin everything. You're a burden. You'll never be enough. And because these thoughts feel automatic, you don't question them. You accept them as truth. Next, it distorts your perception of the world. People feel distant, cold, judging you silently, or worse, not noticing you at all. Opportunities don't look like possibilities anymore. They feel like traps waiting for you to fail. Even things that used to bring joy, music, conversations, your own passions, become dull and lifeless. The world stops being a place to explore and starts feeling like a battlefield you weren't trained to survive. Then comes the final blow. Your view of the future collapses. When you're trapped in depression, you can't imagine things ever getting better. The future isn't just uncertain, it's pointless. What's the use? Becomes the default response to everything. Dreams you once had feel childish now. Goals become fantasies. Hope itself becomes dangerous because the fall from it hurts too much. This triad doesn't just distort your thoughts, it infects your entire identity. You don't feel like someone who's struggling with depression. You feel like someone who is depression. And that distinction is vital, because once you become convinced that these thoughts define you, you stop fighting them. You surrender. And that's exactly what depression wants. But here's the truth Beck revealed. These thoughts are not facts. They are patterns. They are cognitive habits reinforced by emotion, repetition, and pain. And like any pattern, they can be interrupted, unraveled, and replaced. This isn't a matter of simply thinking positive. That's like trying to patch a leaking ship with duct tape. You need to understand the system behind the despair. And that system runs on automatic thoughts that flood your mind every day without your permission and without your awareness. And that's what we're going to expose next. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Imagine waking up in the morning, and before your feet even touch the ground, a voice in your head has already declared the day a failure. It says, "Why even bother? You'll mess it up like always." You haven't made a mistake yet. You haven't even moved. And yet, the trial has already been held, the verdict read, and the sentence passed. Guilty, hopeless, broken. This is not your intuition speaking. This is not a wise inner guide trying to protect you from danger. This is the machinery of depression doing exactly what it was built to do: generate a constant stream of negative automatic thoughts, or as Beck called them, gnats. Gnats are fast, cruel, and convincing. They show up without being invited, and they speak in absolutes. You forget to reply to a message and your brain says, "You're unreliable." You stumble over your words in a meeting and it whispers, "You're a joke." Everyone saw it. You feel tired and the voice snaps, "You're lazy. You're falling behind. You always do." What makes gnats so dangerous isn't just their content, it's their credibility. You believe them without hesitation. You don't argue, you absorb them. And that's what Beck found so revolutionary. Depressed individuals aren't just sad. They're convinced that their sadness is justified. Their suffering feels deserved. Their hopelessness feels rational. These thoughts don't ask for evidence. They are the evidence. At least, that's how it feels. And over time, they form a loop. The more you think them, the more you believe them. The more you believe them, the more you act according to them. And the more you act according to them, the more negative results you get, which then feed the original thoughts. Let me be clear. This is how a self-fulfilling prophecy works. You think, I'll fail, so why try? So you don't give your best. The result? You fail. Then you say, see, I knew it. It feels like proof. But it was a trap all along. Gnats also distort your perception of risk and reward. They tell you not to apply because you'll be rejected, not to reach out because you'll be ignored, not to try because it won't matter. And the worst part? These thoughts don't feel like choices. They feel like truths. You don't even realize you're being manipulated by your own brain. And yet, they are patterns. Predictable, learnable, interruptible patterns. You're not weak for having these thoughts. You're not broken. You're operating on a system that has been hijacked. Depression is not just pain, it's programming. But here's the secret. If it can be programmed, it can be rewritten. But to do that, we have to dig deeper. Because gnats don't operate alone. They're fueled by something even more insidious, cognitive distortions. Specific, systematic ways your brain twists reality, magnifies pain, and buries evidence that contradicts your suffering. And once you learn to spot those distortions for what they are, you begin to tear down the architecture of depression itself. At this point, you might be thinking, if these thoughts are lies, why do they feel so real? Why does a single mistake seem capable of destroying an entire day? Why does one awkward moment echo in your mind for hours, while 10 neutral or positive moments vanish without a trace? Aaron Beck found the answer in something deeply unsettling. Depression doesn't just whisper negative thoughts. It systematically distorts reality. Your mind begins to operate using predictable errors in thinking, patterns so consistent that Beck was able to name and categorize them. He called them cognitive distortions. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. One of the most destructive distortions is catastrophizing. A small error becomes a total disaster. You make a typo in an email and suddenly your mind leaps forward. They'll think I'm incompetent. I'll lose my job. My life is over. There is no pause, no middle ground. The brain jumps straight from minor mistake to total annihilation. Not because it's logical, but because depression thrives on extremes. Then there is overgeneralization. One bad event becomes proof of a permanent pattern. A relationship ends and the conclusion is immediate. I'll always be alone. Nothing ever works out for me. Notice the language. Always, never, everything, nothing. These words feel accurate when you're depressed, but they are the fingerprints of distortion. Reality is complex. Depression flattens it into a single merciless narrative. Another brutal distortion is disqualifying the positive. When something good happens, your mind finds a way to erase it. You receive praise, and the thought appears, they're just being polite. You succeed at something, and the voice responds, anyone could have done that. Positive evidence is treated as invalid, accidental, or undeserved. Meanwhile, negative evidence is treated as absolute truth. There's also mind reading, the assumption that you know what others think and that it's always bad. Someone doesn't reply immediately, and your brain decides, they're annoyed. I'm a burden. No confirmation, no facts, just assumption presented as certainty. And finally, there is all or nothing thinking. If something isn't perfect, it's a failure. If you don't give 100%, you gave nothing. If you improve, but don't transform completely, it doesn't count. This distortion ensures that no effort ever feels sufficient, and no progress ever feels real. Here's the terrifying part. When these distortions operate together, they create the illusion that everything is going wrong. Not occasionally, not partially, completely. And because these distortions feel automatic, you don't realize your mind is editing reality in real time. Beck emphasized something crucial. People with depression are not irrational. They are consistently biased. Their thinking follows rules, broken rules, but rules nonetheless. And once you understand those rules, you can challenge them. But there's still another layer we haven't touched yet. Because depression doesn't just distort how you think, it changes how you act. And those actions, subtle at first, begin to create real-world consequences that seem to confirm the lie that everything is falling apart. This is where the cycle becomes truly dangerous. In the next part, we're going to confront the behaviors that depression quietly installs in your life and how they turn distorted thoughts into real problems. By now, we've exposed how depression distorts your thoughts and perception. But there's something even more insidious happening beneath the surface. Depression doesn't stop at shaping how you think. It quietly rewires how you behave. And these behaviors, over time, begin to generate real, tangible problems in your life. Think of it like this. Your mind plants the seed of a lie. I always fail. And then depression convinces you to act as if that lie is true. And by doing so, you start living in a way that makes it true. One of the most common depressive behaviors is procrastination. But this isn't laziness, it's paralysis. When your mind is filled with self-loathing and fear of failure, even the simplest task becomes a mountain. So you delay, you avoid. You tell yourself, I'll do it later. But later never comes. Tasks pile up, deadlines pass, consequences build. And now, it's no longer just a thought. It's reality. Your life is falling apart because you were too overwhelmed to act. Then there's social withdrawal. Depression tells you you're a burden. No one wants you around. So you cancel plans. You stop responding. You turn down invitations. At first, it's just to rest or protect your energy. But days turn into weeks. Friends stop reaching out. Isolation sets in. And then the thought resurfaces. See, no one cares about me. But what actually happened? Depression pushed you into hiding, and then blamed the world for not coming to find you. Another behavior is neglect of yourself, your space, your responsibilities. You stop cooking. Your home becomes chaotic. You miss appointments. You ignore bills. And the worse it gets, the harder it becomes to climb out. You look around and think, my life is a mess. I can't keep up. I've failed. But that chaos didn't appear out of nowhere. It's the result of emotional exhaustion, not incompetence. Still, it reinforces the lie that you're incapable. And perhaps the most devastating is premature surrender. You start something, a course, a job, a project, but the moment it gets hard, or you face the smallest setback, you quit. Depression whispers, told you, you can't do anything right. But what it doesn't show you is how many times you were actually close to succeeding, if only you had stayed in the game a little longer. Each of these behaviors becomes a brick in the wall around you, not because you're broken, not because you're weak, but because you've been operating under distorted instructions that lead to dysfunctional patterns. And over time, those patterns sculpt your reality. Let this sink in. Depression manufactures the evidence it needs to prove itself right. That's the cruel genius of it. It plants the thought, manipulates your actions, watches the consequences unfold, and then says, see, I told you so. But here's the revolutionary idea Beck offered. If thoughts can lead to behaviors that shape reality, then the cycle can also work in reverse. What if, before waiting to feel better, you acted first? What if, instead of waiting for motivation, you took microscopic steps that could start unraveling the entire depressive system? Because, as Beck proved, behavior is one of the most powerful levers we have to change, not just how we act, but how we think, feel, and live. In the next section, we'll dive into the tools that can help you reclaim control, starting not with thoughts, but with action. Let's explore how small, deliberate moves can begin to fracture the illusion that everything is going wrong. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. If depression is a system of distorted thoughts, paralyzing emotions, and sabotaging behaviors, then the only way out is to intervene in the system. You don't need to fix everything at once. You don't need to have hope, motivation, or clarity. You just need to start moving, intelligently, deliberately, strategically. Aaron Beck didn't promise miracles. He didn't tell people to think positive or repeat empty affirmations. He gave them tools to deconstruct the illusion of failure and to regain control of their own mind. Tools that don't depend on how you feel in the moment, but that create new feelings by changing the way you interact with your reality. And it begins with one principle. Don't wait for your emotions to change. Start acting before they do. This is the foundation of what Beck and his colleagues called behavioral activation. It's the antidote to the behavioral paralysis that depression thrives on. You start not with motivation, not with confidence, but with commitments so small they feel almost ridiculous. If the thought is, I can't clean my house, you don't clean your house. You wash one dish. That's it. Just one. If the thought is, I'm too tired to exercise, you don't run a mile. You walk for 5 minutes, or stretch for 30 seconds. If the thought is, I'll never finish anything, you don't write the whole report. You open the file. You type the first sentence. These actions feel meaningless to your depressed brain, but they are not. They are psychological warfare. Every small completed task is a crack in the structure of helplessness. Each one is a quiet act of rebellion against the part of you that says, why bother? Beck's second strategy was to teach patients to record and challenge their thoughts. He created a process called the thought record, a tool designed to bring automatic thoughts out of the shadows and onto the page. Because here's the truth, thoughts feel real when they remain unseen. But when you write them down, when you analyze them, they begin to lose their power. You write, what happened? I broke a glass. What did I think? I'm such a failure. I ruin everything. What's the distortion? Catastrophizing, overgeneralization. What's the evidence? It was an accident. Everyone breaks things sometimes. I completed 2 tasks today. What's a more balanced thought? This was annoying, but it doesn't define me. One broken glass doesn't equal a broken life. It sounds simple. It is. But it works. Not because it feels good, but because it trains your brain to distinguish between emotional noise and objective reality. And when you do this consistently, the fog begins to lift. Another key technique is the deliberate collection of positive evidence. Depression blinds you to anything that contradicts its narrative, so you fight back by forcing your awareness in the other direction. At the end of each day, you ask, what went right? What didn't fall apart? What did I manage even barely? These don't need to be grand victories. Waking up on time, eating something, sending a message. You write them down, not because they're impressive, but because they're real. And they prove that not everything is going wrong. And then there's perhaps the most powerful tool of all, reframing failure as data. Beck taught his patients to run behavioral experiments. You don't just assume your depressive predictions are true, you test them. You say, if I go to this gathering, people will judge me. So you go, you observe, you record what actually happened, and more often than not, the feared disaster never arrives. Or if it does, it's far less catastrophic than predicted. This practice teaches one of the most liberating truths of all. Your depressed brain is a terrible fortune teller. These tools are not about feeling better instantly. They're about building a new mental operating system, one that is grounded in evidence, guided by action, and resilient in the face of setbacks. But here's the challenge. Even when you know the thoughts are distorted, even when you're armed with tools, it can still feel impossible to begin. Because there's one more obstacle we haven't tackled yet. Something deeper than thoughts or actions. a mental trap that keeps you circling the same pain over and over without ever escaping it. Next, we're going to confront one of depression's most paralyzing weapons, rumination. Even after everything we've discussed, the distorted thoughts, the sabotaging behaviors, the lies depression tells, you may still find yourself stuck. You might recognize the patterns, understand the cycle, even try to take action, but still feel like you're trapped in the same emotional quicksand, sinking slowly while your mind replays the same pain, the same mistakes, the same hopeless scenarios over and over. This final trap is called rumination, and it is one of the most toxic weapons in depression's arsenal. Rumination is not reflection, it's not deep thinking, it's not problem solving, it's mental spinning, a loop of thoughts that repeats endlessly without resolution. You lie in bed for hours, replaying that conversation where you said the wrong thing. You relive failures from years ago. You imagine worst-case scenarios that haven't even happened yet, and feel the emotional pain as if they already did. You tell yourself you're just thinking it through, but you're not. You're drowning in your own mind. Beck understood that rumination doesn't heal. It erodes. It deepens shame. It strengthens fear. And worst of all, it paralyzes action. Because the more you ruminate, the more overwhelmed you feel. And the more overwhelmed you feel, the less capable you believe you are, until even the smallest task feels impossible. So how do you escape? First, you need to name it. When you catch yourself spiraling, say it out loud or write it down. I'm ruminating. Interrupt the loop with awareness. Then ask yourself, is this helping me solve anything? Is this making me feel stronger or more hopeless? Would I encourage a friend to keep thinking like this? Then redirect. Not with force, but with intention. Move your body, do a small task, talk to someone, touch something physical. Rumination lives in the mind, so the antidote often begins in the body. You don't need to solve the problem in your head. You need to break the loop. But even more powerful than disrupting rumination is learning to meet yourself with self-compassion. This might sound soft, maybe even weak, but Beck saw the truth. Many depressed individuals are not suffering from lack of discipline. They're suffering from an abusive inner voice, a relentless stream of self-criticism so brutal that it would be considered psychological abuse if spoken by anyone else. You make a mistake, and your brain says, "You're pathetic." You feel overwhelmed, and it says, "Get it together, you failure." But would you speak that way to someone you love? To a friend? To a child? Self-compassion doesn't mean excuses. It means recognizing that you are suffering, and that beating yourself over the head with shame will never heal that suffering. It only deepens it. When you mess up, say this instead: I'm having a hard time. I didn't handle that well, but I'm trying, and I can try again tomorrow. That shift in tone from condemnation to understanding is not weakness. It's how healing begins. Because here's the final truth Beck leaves us with. You are not broken. You are operating under a system that has malfunctioned, and systems can be rebuilt. Each time you catch a distorted thought, each time you take one small action, even without motivation, each time you resist the spiral of rumination, even for 5 seconds, each time you speak to yourself with kindness instead of cruelty, you are breaking the illusion that everything is going wrong. You're proving that change is not only possible, it's already happening. So now it's your turn. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's one thing that resonated with you? What part of the cycle did you recognize in your own life? Just by putting your experience into words, you begin to step outside of it. And if this video hit home, don't stop here. There's a next step waiting for you. A deeper layer to explore. A powerful idea that might be the missing piece you've been searching for. Keep watching. I'll see you there.